experiences, especially given the context of Western Sahara, where the feminist movement hasn't had a chance to have the space to create movements or to create collectives due to the political context that we are living in. But the platform that I am part of managed to start in 2017, as I mentioned. And we started with small groups of people from the region. We're trying to make the space for people who will live under the occupation, to interact with people who live in refugees camps. And from that, we went forward to create more campaigns, more political campaigns to advocate for the political context that we live under from a feminist lens. But we also managed to go more into a more regional platform. Right now, we have an active blog that receives and works and collaborates with writers from the region. We focus on various different thematics, from feminist knowledge to feminist mobilizing. And mostly lately also, we have been trying to create like a kind of an archive for the movement in this place, especially given that a lot of the Arabic speaking countries do not always feel, or like aren't always part of the grander Arabic speaking movement. So we tried as much as we can to make a space for those marginalized contexts in the movements as a whole, and to create a big archive of knowledge around the different contexts that we live under, culturally, socially, economically, and politically as well, with the main focus being North African countries, especially Western Sahara and Mauritania. And from that, we managed to mobilize and also collaborate with different platforms from the African context, but also from the from this one and as a whole. And also we managed lately to interact and to work with some of the global organizations and grassroots all over the globe that work on the same thematics that we work on. That is the main thing that I want to introduce myself with, because I have such pride with that project, and it's my main background, and it's also the place that I
Greetings. Hello. Happy day to you. Happy New Year to those of you that recognize and commemorate that. We are glad that you are here to join us for this week's episode of Our Ancestors' Voices, a weekly program sponsored by the All African People's Revolutionary Party. And we welcome you here for our topic for today, which is a statement by George Padmore. George Padmore, who was originally known as Malcolm Nurse, was a revolutionary Pan-Africanist who was from Trinidad in the Caribbean, and he ended up doing a substantial amount of Pan-African work in Europe and Britain primarily. And from there, he moved to Ghana, where he spent his last years as an advisor to Kwame Nkrumah's government in Ghana. And in Padmore's historic book, Pan-Africanism or Communism, Pan-Africanism or Communism. The book was written some 80 years ago. If you can get your hands on that book, we highly recommend it. It's not an easy book to find, but it's an outstanding book. And a lot of people get confused by the title. They think that Padmore was saying that Pan-Africanism versus communism, and that's not. Obviously, Pan-Africanism is a pathway to communism. But what Padmore was referencing as communism in the book was the Soviet bloc, or the USSR, the Union of Socialist Soviet Republics, Russia, whatever way you understand it, and talking about the pathway they were taking was not the roadway to socialism that we as African people need to take. And we certainly in 2025 stand firm on Padmore's statement. But in that book, he made the comment: revolutionary at 20, moderate at 30, conservative at 40, and reactionary at 50. And so this is what we're going to talk about in today's program, just the concept of how do people maintain their revolutionary consciousness and commitment as you grow older in a capitalist dominated society. So that's the topic of today's program, and we give honor and respect to the indigenous people of the Western Hemisphere, the folks who are steadily engaged in a struggle to win their lands back. These lands belong to them and no one else. And by them, we mean the actual indigenous people of the Western Hemisphere, not any of you Africans out here that are ashamed of Africa and you want to create some kind of fantasy identity because you are too intellectually lazy to study our glorious African history. But we're talking about the actual indigenous people of the Western Hemisphere, the Chicanos, the Mexicanos, the natives, the Indians here, as they call themselves, the Native Americans, the indigenous people of the Western Hemisphere, Puerto Ricanos. These are the actual indigenous people of the Western Hemisphere. And the only African that doesn't want to claim Africa is one that knows nothing about Africa. So we're talking about them, and we support their struggle to win their land back. And we honor our African ancestors. We honor the Africans who came before us, who struggled so much so that they could create a environment for us to have better footing to continue the struggle. And, you know, there are famous Africans that we celebrate who have gone on to the ancestral realm, and then there are other Africans who nobody may know except us. You know, I know that I lost my mother-in-law last week. She was 91 years old, and she was a woman that worked hard her entire life for her two daughters, one of which is my wife, and dealt with all of the, what I understand about her life, all of the indignities that our people deal with on a day-to-day basis. And yeah, she is now an ancestor, and we give honor and respect to all of the contributions of the people who put up with so much stuff so that we can move forward as a people and as human beings. So we thank you for joining us today. And we start, as we always do, just by our brief introduction as to who we are. Our Ancestors' Voices is again sponsored by the All African People's Revolutionary Party. And we say that, you all, because we want you to understand that this is an organization with an ideology and an objective. This is not just two individuals spouting off opinions. There's enough of that on social media. There's all kind of idiots and buffoons spouting opinions with no accountability to anything other than whatever they decide is going to come out of their mouths. And we want you to understand that we're not in that same realm. We are an organization that exists all over the planet Earth, all over Africa, Europe, all over the Americas, and we are accountable to the objective we have of Pan-Africanism and our ideology, which is Nkrumahism, Toureism, Cabralism, the ideology of revolutionary Pan-Africanism. So that's who we are. And the APRP is a revolutionary, independent, mass Pan-African political party, which is based in Africa. And our objective, the work that we're doing, is to achieve Pan-Africanism. And again, there are all types of weird definitions people use for Pan-Africanism, but we believe that we have the correct one. And that correct one is one united socialist Africa, one continental socialist Africa. We believe that that is the solution to the problems that African people, people of African descent face. All 2 billion of us living in 120 countries all over the world, speaking so many different languages, so practicing so many faiths, doing so many different things, we are still one people. And until we understand that, and until we understand that our salvation is tied to the direction of our mother, Africa, we will forever be in this condition of scattered and suffering and with no real program or plan to alleviate it. So our work to achieve Pan-Africanism is outlined in Kwame Nkrumah's Handbook of Revolutionary Warfare. And if you're looking at a screen, and you most certainly should be, because you'll miss a lot if you're not, that is the book pictured on your screen, and it is the book that outlines our strategy to achieve our objective of Pan-Africanism, uniting all of the revolutionary Pan-Africanist forces on the ground throughout Africa into one body, leading to an all-African committee for political coordination, leading to the All African People's Revolutionary Party in its manifest conception. So that's the work that we're engaged in. And Our Ancestors' Voices is one of many programs we do in the APRP. This one is hosted by myself, Ajamu, and Shakura, my biological and ideological daughter. And both of us, of course, are active organizers within the AAPRP. And so to get us started on today's topic, George Padmore's statement, revolutionary at 20, moderate at 30, conservative at 40, and reactionary at 50. I turn it over to Shakur.
Thank you. Ooh, what a deep, deep comment to get us started. I really love that. Thank you. Thank you, Ancestor. Appreciate that, Comrade Padmore. All right. So you all, we're going to start with looking at some different examples of how capitalism starts to kind of incorporate this input-output system, if you will. It's very intentional with the propaganda. There's so many systems in place where we start to think about how we're operating off of a consumer economy, right? And so this kind of shapes itself to kind of help us understand that really any and everything can have some type of price assigned to it. Any and everything can be commodified. And I would strongly encourage you to think of one example of something that is not commodified in this world. And I'm sure we'd be able to push back and resist by giving another example that would refute what it is you're saying, because the purpose of capitalism is to profit off of as many things as possible and by any means necessary. So that's when we are kind of describing this commodified and this commodity and what that looks like. And so, because of that, there's nothing that is precious. There's nothing that is withstained or to be overlooked. There's nothing that can be accepted. When I say accepted, I mean nothing that can be withheld and not be commodified, is what I'm trying to say. And so, this is where the concept of everything has a price comes from. I think a lot about how, we are supposed to pay registration if we have vehicles, and the registration is supposed to help maintain the roads that we drive on, right? And so, obviously the registration for your vehicle is a commodity. The oil or the gas that you need to operate that vehicle is a commodity as well. We know that the different roads may not be managed as best as they can be. And so because of that, some roads in certain areas tend to have poor infrastructure. And because of that, they might, create more potholes. It might have more dents or indentations in the roads. So you're driving on all of that, That's going to start to impact your vehicle. It'll start to impact your tires. It'll start to impact your alignment, different things like that. And we get to a point where you might need to replace the air in your tires, right? So this is like my favorite example I love sharing, because we live in a world where air is not even free. If you're a bicyclist, not just for drivers, but just as a bicyclist, if you needed to put air in your tires, you would still have to pay for that. And I think about the grocery store that's really close to my apartment. It's $2. And it probably runs, the machine probably runs for about, I'll say about 20 seconds, if that. I've never actually counted it, but it's not very long. So I'm rushing, trying to get my $2 worth and putting air and tires that probably don't need air, just because I'm trying to just get the money's worth, right? And so it's just really interesting to me that I was driving around one day before I saw the grocery store that had the air machine, and it was so difficult for me to find a place to put air in my tire. Then I realized, as I was going to Costco to get another tire replaced, that they have two machines and there's no cost. And I wondered to myself, because we live in a capitalist society, first and foremost, if you're not a Costco member, I'm very sure they're already regulating that, where you can't just pull up and scan. You probably have to scan your membership somehow, some way, because that's also commodified, right? So they need to make sure that if they're going to give you free air, it's because technically you're already paying for it because you have a paid membership. Are you all with me? Because it's very important to stay connected, right? We have to stay connected and we have to be on the same accord so we understand what's happening. So there's a lot of assumptions about you being able to use this free air machine at Costco because you're a Costco member, right? But even then, I'm wondering to myself, how long is that machine going to be free? How long is it going to be free? Because technically, you can buy food at the food court at Costco, but you still buy it. The food is not free just because you have a Costco membership. You still have to buy the food separately. So I am very clear that in a certain amount of time, that air is going to start to have a commodified price attached to it, right? And so these are just some ways that we can kind of think about that. I also really love to mention the conversation I had with Comrade Ajamu a couple of weeks ago, or maybe last week now, where we were just talking about how societies such as the US, we could even think about, Occupy Palestine and what's happening over there with the occupation and whatnot. We have these different societies where people profit greatly and they enjoy, profiting off of people's misfortune and bad lucks. So, I was talking to Comrade Ajamu about how, in Cuba, for example, you don't have to pay for medical insurance. We know that because health insurance is free there. But I think the point I'm trying to make is, here, that's something so difficult for us to fathom, because not only do you have your medical premium that you probably pay, but you probably have a dental premium that you pay. You probably have vision insurance that is a separate premium that you pay. Let's keep in mind that the copays that you're paying is not the same thing as the monthly premiums that you're paying every month, right? And then if you have mental health therapy, if you have chiropractic care, if you have podiatry care, some of us need physical therapy, some of us need specific specialties because we need help with our guts or we need help with our hands. I have carpal tunnel syndrome. And just to go see a hand specialist and to have him tell me that I would need surgery, I paid $50, not to mention the gas for me to drive all the way across town. So I'm just saying, like, it's really interesting to me how if you take a environment like Cuba, that's not what their interest is. They're not interested in you coming back, really, which is why we always say that Cuba is such a great example of what humanity and true socialism really looks like, because the providers that work in Cuba, they don't want you to come back because the pain is not managed and gone away. They want to help you figure out a way to manage your pain so that it can be either A, completely eradicated and you don't have to return back to them, or at least so you can manage it in a way where you're comfortable and you feel good, right? They don't want you to keep coming back to them because that means that they haven't really done the best job that they can. And I would also argue tow trucks. That's another example of someone's misfortune and how you are able to capitalize on it. right? How you're able to assign a value to it, a profit to it, so that people whose cars happen to break down, they now have to either figure out how they're going to pay for this car to be removed from one location to another, or maybe they have another membership like I do, where tomorrow, when I still have to take my car back to Costco, it's probably going to snow here tonight and I don't want to drive on a spare. So I'm probably going to have to get the car towed. Now, I'm not going to pay to get it towed because I've already paid a AAA membership. So that money is going towards that tow. But my point is, why should we have to invest so much when these bad things are happening to us? And I need you all to really understand that's how it operates in the US. That is not the overall end all in other parts of the world. As we just pointed out, there are other locations where people are not going to celebrate you needing to tow your vehicle. They're going to find ways from a state system, supportive system, or from a collective or neighborhood or community collective where there is collective money put into a pot to help service folks who need those kind of supports in place. Because we understand that things like that happen. But here in the US, everything is so individual. In the world competing for your business because they're all trying to make it and they're all trying to make sure that they can get your dollar. And so they're praying that your car breaks down. They're praying that your car breaks down every day because we're the ones that keep them employed, right? And so this commodity piece is kind of disgusting in a sense because it really doesn't allow us to behave as humanistic people. It doesn't allow us to see the value in collectively helping one another. We don't have to think about the drawbacks of being individualistic. Instead, we're just thinking about how we as individuals need to navigate in this world. But in actuality, this is a system that hurts every single one of us. And instead of us thinking about ways that we're all being penalized, that we're all being hurt by this system, the individualism is just teaching us to just think about our own inconveniences when we really should be thinking about how anyone who has to call a tow truck is inconvenienced, especially for those that are not in a position to pay for it, especially for those that maybe didn't even cause the reason for the car to be towed. If you were in a car accident and it wasn't your fault, then you shouldn't have to pay for that tow truck. But yet here we are coming back to the insurance conversation, right? So I really want us to just kind of break that down and just really think about that. And, we can't allow the BS rhetoric to get in our head. So we can't allow the insurance companies to say to us, well, you want to be able to pay for it in case something happens. That's exactly what Comrade Ajamu said to me was that kind of ideology is not even taught when you live in a place like Cuba or maybe even Venezuela, Nicaragua. Those kind of mentalities are not even taught when you live in places like that because the ideology behind it is you shouldn't have to worry about if something happens because you have enough confidence and faith in the state, in the system that has never let you down before, that they have systems in place. They have supportive programs in place to support you if something like that happens so that you don't have to purchase insurance in case something happens because there's already more humane systems in place to support you when something like that might happen. Next slide, please. So, just thinking a little bit more about this, we can even start to think about how, everything in capitalism is supposed to be quick and easy. It's supposed to be, but even the example I just gave to you, I realized I had a flat tire. This is going on Friday night now. And I spent all day yesterday at Costco trying to get them to figure out what the issue was. And I couldn't get the car to get pulled back into the bay. Today I walked in again, hoping that I could follow up because the soonest appointment they had was Monday. And the point we're trying to make to you all is it's not quick and easy. It's never been quick and easy because a lot of the resources that are here in the US are being stolen from other parts of the world and they're being exploited. So we're not really in a position where things can be quick and easy because if that were the case, then not enough money would be made. And the number one objective is to profit, 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 profit as much as possible. Profit, 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 profit after our misfortunes, after our misfortunes and bad luck and just trauma and sadness. Profit, 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 right? So these are the cases where we kind of think about how The assumption is that everything is supposed to be quick and easy, but we know that's simply not true. And we can even think outside of automobile examples, which if you've ever needed to order a part, especially since the quarantine, you know what we're talking about in terms of things taking a long time. Even now, the tire that I need is not even in stock. So they have to deliver it and I have to wait and go back yet again tomorrow. Hopefully the tire will be there so that we can put it on there. But this is now a 3-day process. You all, my entire weekend has been dedicated to trying to get this tire fixed. And I do have a Costco membership and I did buy my tires there and I do have a warranty, but none of this has been quick and none of it has been easy. None of it. Okay. None of it. Okay. So when we think more about that, we can think about even examples outside of that. When you go to the grocery store, that's not a quick and easy experience. You know how I know? Because Instacart has made it their #1 priority to exploit the fact that it takes people longer to shop in person. And that's why they encourage you to invest in a membership, because they will save you time if you allow a shopper to shop on your behalf. They will literally tell you once you place your order how much time you have saved by putting this task on someone else to do it for you. And they're right to some extent. The idea of driving to the store, finding a park space, trying to figure out where to get a basket, trying to make sure that you remember everything on your list and that you have your list, it's a lot of things to keep in mind. They're absolutely right, but that doesn't mean that they can exploit off of that, but yet they do. And then you have even different companies, even within Instacart. You have Shipt, you have Amazon Groceries. I saw a commercial yesterday for Amazon Pharmacy and Amazon Doctors. You can chat with the doctor from Amazon. I mean, what the heck? What is happening here? That is insane to me. It is insane to me that you can order prescriptions off of Amazon. That is insane to me. Okay. But yet here we are. Here we are, right? Because why would you get in your car and drive all the way to Walgreens when you could just order it on Amazon and it can be shipped to your house? Because it's faster, it's efficient, or so they say. So they say, right? It's not faster and it's not efficient, because they'll take your package and drop it off 3 houses down and you don't know where your stuff is. Okay. So it's not faster and it's not efficient, but yet here we are, right? So I think these are important concepts for us to think about, you all. It's really important for us to think about how, as a result of this lie that everything is faster and easier, the concept of political education and becoming a revolutionary, it's not something that should be promoted. It's not something that is attractive. It's not something that many people want to do, because if you idolize capitalism and you are against revolutionary practices and you're against increasing your political education, then you will benefit from the fast and easy system, or so they say, right? So we have to kind of really just think about our own experiences. We have to, think about our familial experiences. We have to think about community experiences. Since when have things been fast and easy? I don't know about you, but ever since I was old enough to understand capitalism, things have always been challenging. They have always been challenging. They've always been stressful. And it's never really been a system that I have felt has been humane whatsoever. It's always been a system that makes me feel sick to my stomach. I get so frustrated when I think of capitalism and the harm that it has done to so many people every single day. And people who don't even understand how capitalism is harming them, to me, that's because they don't have a high level of political education. I at least am humble enough to admit that I have a lot to learn still, but because I'm in work study, which is a component organizing with the All African People's Revolutionary Party, I am able to kind of take these examples at this point and say that's connected to capitalism. That's connected to capitalism. That's because of capitalism. Well, you know that's because of capitalism. We live in an inhumane system. That's because of capitalism, and that, and that, and that, and that. And so then from there, you start to kind of manage your sanity a little bit better, because capitalism will make you think that you're the problem. Capitalism will make you think that you're a loser if you don't have all the money in the world. Capitalism will make you think that you don't have what it takes and you're not a successful professional. You're not a successful individual. You probably suck at relationships. You're a horrible parent. You're not even a good dog parent. That's what capitalism will make you think. That's why you see all these commercials for Chewy. because you're not doing enough for your dog, right? And you see all these commercials for tutoring services because you're not doing enough for your kids. And you didn't take them to the new park that was just open with the ribbon cut 2 weeks ago and stuff. But yet these are the things, right? Like these are the things, you all. So we have to kind of really think about this and break this down, because what has capitalism really done for us? Like for real, for real. What has capitalism really done? Everything is dialectical, don't get me wrong. So yes, there actually are some positives to capitalism. We can talk about that another day, but for the overwhelming majority, this system is made it very clear that if you are poor, if you have the wrong colonized ancestry, if you are the wrong gender, if you don't have a able-bodied presenting features, if you are not of a heteronormative lifestyle, you are not going to succeed in this system. Things are going to be so much more harder for you. That has been a constant across the board. That has been a constant across the board. And even European cis people still struggle under capitalism. So it's not even that you just need to be straight and you need to be European and you need to be a male. If you are those things, your life is a lot easier. But that doesn't mean that you don't still struggle, because capitalism is a horrible system for every single living organism, including European cis men. It is a horrible system. It does not value any of us. None of us matter. We are all susceptible to be sucked under the rug and forgotten about. So as I prepare to close and give the slide back to Comrade Ajamu, we have to think about how with capitalism, anything that you think you need is so accessible to you. That's the other problem. It's one click away, right? So we can think about how if you are thinking that you have money problems, well, you should marry a millionaire. If you marry a millionaire, then you won't have any money problems anymore. If there's something wrong with your car, you should enhance it so that you can have better features on your car. If people see that you have a nicer car, they might assume that you have more money and you might be in a higher class bracket. You might get treated better. You might have more better opportunities because of it. All of that is propaganda to make you think, again, as I just said, that you're not enough. And more importantly, that you as a revolutionary are not enough. And we have got to uncenter, debunk, demystify. We have to acknowledge the oxymorons. We have to call that stuff out, you all. And we have to acknowledge that it's nonsense. It is rhetorical BS is what it is. We need to understand that's what's going on. We have to understand that propaganda is so effective, it'll make us question everything that we know, which is why I was speaking to the insanity piece before. So as I prepare to close, this is exactly why joining an organization working for justice and increasing your political education is not only going to save your life, and it's going to help to free, either if you're African, Africa, or if you're colonized from another area, it'll help to free your land. But more importantly, it'll help you free your mind, because capitalism already has control over your mind. So the thing you need to focus on is increasing your political education and freeing your mind from a system that does nothing but oppresses it every single day. Sure.
She obrigada, medasi, asante sana. Thank you very much. And just moving us along to get into the focus that you've given us a foundation to George Padmore's statement: revolutionary at 20, moderate at 30, conservative at 40, reactionary at 50. We want to use Eldridge Cleaver as an example of what George Padmore was talking about. And if you don't know, Eldridge Cleaver was born Leroy Eldridge Cleaver. He was a person who wrote in his best-selling book, Soul on Ice, how he grew up in the Los Angeles area and became a rapist and was raping African women. And as he says in the book, and I've read it multiple times, so don't question. I mean, you have to read it before we can have a discussion about it. But what he says in the book is that he practiced raping African women because he had this dysfunctional desire. He was attracted to the woman who accused Emmett Till of whistling at her in Mississippi in 1955. And if you, of course, know the story, that woman, Carolyn, whatever the hell her name was, Bryant, Carolyn Bryant, she accused 14-year-old Emmett Till of this uh, unspeakable crime of whistling at her. And as a result of that, 14-year-old Emmett was viciously and brutally murdered. And Eldridge Cleaver talked about how he had a physical attraction to Carolyn Bryant, and this kind of led him into this behavior of becoming a rapist. These are his words. It's very difficult for me to conceptualize how any of that could be responsible for that, but this is what he says in this book, Soul on Ice, if you read it. And so he talked about how he raped African women, and he got arrested. He went to prison, and it was in prison that he joined the Nation of Islam. And after Malcolm X was assassinated or left the nation, he left with Malcolm and considered himself a follower of Malcolm. And to make a long story short, when he got out of prison, his book was published. He had income from that. He became a writer for Ramparts magazine, which was a radical magazine in the Bay Area at that time. And he joined the Black Panther Party. He observed the Black Panther Party escorting Sister Betty Shabazz, who was the widow of Malcolm X, in San Francisco airport, and how the police, they had guns, the Panthers did, and the police went to disrupt them, and Huey P. Newton stood down the cops with his shotgun and jacked around in the chamber of his shotgun and called the police pigs and told them that he would end their lives if they messed with him. And, that began the legendary reputation of the Black Panther Party for self-defense. And Cleaver was influenced by that, and he joined the Panther Party and became their minister of information. And really, once the government began to target Black Panther Party leaders and put them behind bars, Huey P. Newton, Bobby Seale, etc., and so forth, Cleaver became really the main driving force behind the Black Panther Party. By 1968, that's what he was. He formed alliances with other organizations, other communities, and he really began to push the party in the direction he felt it should go in, a more radical direction. I would argue everything is dialectical, so just being radical by itself is not always a good thing. And in the case of Cleaver, that most certainly was true, especially when that radicalism is not driven by a firm and committed revolutionary ideology. And that was certainly not the case. And so as a result, Cleaver ended up leading several Black Panthers into a shootout against the police on April 6th, 1968, in response to the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. 2 days before that. And little Bobby Hutton, the original member of the Black Panther Party after Huey P. Newton and Bobby Seale, was killed when he came out of a basement that he and Cleaver were in during the shootout with the police. And little Bobby Hutton's hands were up, and the police gunned him down. And to escape charges related to those incidents, Cleaver fled the country and went to Algeria. He started the international section of the Black Panther Party in Algiers. And there were a lot of problems with that. There were people that were killed over there. There were a lot of issues with that, with Eldridge Cleaver. Came back to the U.S. in 1975, 76, and essentially renounced the politics of radical transformation, and became what, as he called himself, a political conservative. Joined at first the Unification Church from South Korea, Reverend Sing Young Moon, if you want to look that up. And then he became a clothes designer by the mid 1980s and designed male pants that had a penis pouch in them for your penis. And then he joined the Church of Latter-day Saints, or the Mormon Church. And the picture you see on your screen on the right is Cleaver speaking at the Mormon Tabernacle, or not, I'm sorry, that picture is not, he's speaking at a Mormon event, but there is a video on YouTube, if you type it, Eldridge Cleaver at the Mormon Tabernacle, where he's speaking to the Mormon Tabernacle in Salt Lake City, Utah. So I think Eldridge's life because it was guided by a lot of things, but I would argue that organized political education was not one of them. That I think he's a great example of Padmore's statement: revolutionary at 20, moderate at 30, conservative at 40, reactionary at 50. And Padmore, as I mentioned in the beginning, a monumental revolutionary Pan-Africanist. He made that statement so many decades ago, but the principles still apply. There are so many people that start out with a fire to change the world. But when you're in this struggle, like as long as I've been honored to participate in our African liberation struggle, I've seen this more times than I can count. People that started out when I started out, or along the way, in their 20s, as I was in my 20s, militant as you can imagine, ready to go. And a lot of these people today, I still know them, some of them, many of them, and they've gone in completely different directions. Many of them have turned to religion. Many of them have just turned to just out and out consumer capitalism. But a lot of them are, not anywhere close to the radical political identity that we all shared back in the 1980s. And I think that it's important to talk about this because if you have an interest in maintaining your consistency as a revolutionary Pan-Africanist, or just as a revolutionary period, or just as a person who is dedicated to transforming the world we live in a positive direction, it's essential that you have tools to ensure that you can stay in that lane, because the capitalist system works overtime to weaken us, to derail us, to normalize capitalism, to make us think that being radical on our thinking is absurd or insane or just so unattainable that there's no reason that we should try to continue to do that. So these are the things that we have to understand as we go through our lives and get older. The capitalist system, it has a process. You are supposed to, by the time you're 30, be married. You're supposed to have a house that you own. By the time you're 40, you should have all of those things well secured. You should be able to travel whenever you want. You should have nice cars and all these things. And if you don't have that within that timeline, the capitalist system has been consistent enough in its propaganda that most of us will believe that our lives are somewhat of a failure, if not a complete failure, if we haven't obtained those things in that fashion, in that period of time, that somehow we're a failure. And don't tell me, a lot of you listening, that's what you believe about your life. I haven't achieved. And the question you have to ask yourself is, what are you measuring yourself against? Because what the capitalist system attempts to do, as Shakur mentioned, is really make us believe that no matter what we do, it's never going to be good enough. So this is when people talk to me about these things, I always ask them, well, what is your measuring rod? What are you measuring yourself against? Because you really can't, there's nothing that you can measure yourself against because nobody's life is like yours. So if you're 60 years old and you decide I want to go back to school and get a college degree, that is a wonderful thing. It's a wonderful thing if you want to use knowledge to enhance your understanding so you can help us solve some of these problems about how to transform this world. That's a beautiful thing. There's nothing more beautiful than that. If you start a relationship at 60 years old, that's a wonderful thing, as long as it's a positive, healthy relationship that's contributing towards making, your environment a positive environment. That's a wonderful thing. There's no time clock that says you cannot do these things because you're 60 years old. But yet most of us believe that. Well, I'm 30, it's too late for me to do this. I'm 40, it's too late for me to do this. And if you can't answer the question, well, what am I measuring myself up against that makes me believe that? Then the reason why you can't answer it is because the capitalist model has seeped into your subconsciousness and it's made you believe that you're never going to be good enough and that you haven't done the things that you need to do to qualify. And so this is why I would argue that things like depression and anxiety are so are such a problem in these capitalist societies. And this is why it's important that we have mechanisms to help us navigate through these things. So let's look at why does this betrayal happen? And by betrayal, I mean, why do we sell out the African liberation struggle? Why do we sell out the struggle for justice? Why do many of us seem to get to a place as we get older where we justify not engaging in struggle anymore? Why does that happen? And we would argue that 99.9% of the time, that fire that existed when we were young, that militancy, that uncompromising stature, the reasons why those things exist are not healthy reasons. It's fueled by anger and frustration and disappointment and fear. That's what's fueling us. And none of those things are sustainable. None of those things are sustainable. So, I have this picture on the screen, and it's from the Juice in the Hood movie, or I'm sorry, I'm Gonna Get You Sucker movie, Keaton Ivory Wayans from the 80s. And this is the scene where he has the brother in there, Stanford Brown, and he's playing the African militant, and then his woman is Eve Plum, who was Jan Brady in the Brady Bunch TV series, and he goes because he's trying to run the crime out of the community, and he goes there. He's thinking he's going to get these African militants to help him, and the brother's there. He's got the European kids, and it's a comedy movie, but he asked the brother, well, where are all the militants? And he said, well, they all got jobs. And this is what we're talking about right now. The capitalist system will always have options for you to compromise your principles. I remember when I was a student activist at Sacramento State University, we were raising hell on that campus. We were in the news. We were putting fear. We had the administration shaking in their boots because of the hell. We were shutting the campus down with sit-in protests. We were doing all types of things to disrupt the campus. And the dean at that time called me in his office, and they offered me a job. I was getting ready to graduate. I was going to get my bachelor's degree. I didn't have anything lined up, and they offered me a job. And I turned them down, but I'm saying that was my first exposure to what I'm talking to you about now. And he even said to me, like, you're out here doing all this stuff. We need to get you some stability in this society. So that's how they look at it. Like, if they can begin to, and I would argue that on a broader scale, this affirmative action program, which never would have resulted were it not for the massive urban rebellions that happened in this country in the 1960s. You had 300 of those types of rebellions after Dr. Martin Luther King was assassinated. And that's what fueled Richard Nixon sitting down with McGeorge Bundy, the Ford Foundation chair, David Rockefeller of the Rockefeller capitalist class family, and all of these types of people to sit down and develop affirmative action, because the Kerner report had told them, and they used the Kerner report as their foundation. And it had told them that there were two Americas, one white, one black. And if something wasn't done to address that the urban rebellions would not only increase, but escalate into something else. And the something else they assumed to be revolution or something thereof. And so affirmative action was there something else, where they began to create these minority contracts. They began to have special admittance to universities, began to implement these things with the objective of creating a much larger African petty bourgeoisie class. Because the entire role of the petty bourgeoisie class is to serve as middle managers for the capitalist system, for the capitalist class, to keep the workers in line, to represent the values of the capitalist system, to do this. So this joke of they all got jobs, it's funny, but it's really a very accurate depiction of what happens to make revolutionaries or people who claim to be revolutionaries feel that, yeah, if I can get myself in a comfortable position, then now it's no longer a thing where I feel like I have to change, make a contribution to changing society because these are the principles I believe in, and I'm not ever willing to compromise with those principles, but instead create an area, create a niche where I can develop some comfort within this oppressive system. Even though it's oppressing my people and it's oppressing the majority of humanity, I can develop some comfort which will allow me to coexist with it, which will make it so that I no longer feel like I need to struggle against the system because I'm getting what I need out of the system. And that's the strategy of the capitalist system. And this is, I would argue, is what Padmore was talking about. Because the capitalist system understands that these emotions of anger, frustration, disappointment, fear, etc., are driving most of us in everything we do. The police murder one of us, we run out in the streets. We want to tear up everything. We want it to stop tonight. That's an emotional response to that. And I'm not saying that I understand it. I understand the anger. I understand all of that. But that's not how we can, that alone will not get us in the position we need to be in to create the change that we want. And so they understand, our enemies, that this type of militancy can be put out like a fire overwhelmed by water. And all they have to do is address those emotional concerns. And once they do that, a large percentage of us will no longer have the fire to engage in any type of struggle against the system. We'll no longer want to do that. And this is what we're talking about, because when you're in your 20s, if you think about it, you haven't acquired much. Most of what drives you at that point are the ideas. The idea is that you'll be at this place in a certain amount of time. You'll accomplish this in a certain amount of time. It's the ideas. And the ideas will circulate in many different forms and fashions. And some of those ways will be positive ways, even revolutionary ways. But they're mostly ideas. You haven't lived long enough to really put much of it into practice on any level. So it's mostly ideas. As you grow older, things begin to how should we say, things in your life begin to crystallize. Whatever direction you're going to go in, you begin to do that. You begin to develop more consistency with what you're doing. And so by the time you're in your late 30s and 40s, you pretty much have an idea of the trajectory of your life. You don't necessarily have that in your 20s. You're still trying to figure it out. You pretty much have that. And whatever that is, now you have to try to figure out how to create the emotional stability to support the direction you're going in. And if you don't have the revolutionary foundation, meaning you're not building a consistent revolutionary consciousness, you don't have anything in place to ensure that that happens, then you're not going to have that. That is not going to be the part of your life that wins. That's not going to win out. All these other things are going to win out. Well, I should try to do this. And I hear it all the time from people. Well, I used to do that, but people can't be trusted. And, you put out all those sacrifices and you don't get anything in return. And I just decided, I needed to do something for myself and my family. I hear this. I've heard this a million times over the last 40 plus years. And to me, it's really a very sad and disgusting response, because the people who maintain their existence in the struggle, like people say that to me all the time. They say things to me like, I don't have time. Like, I have time, like I have time to burn. They say this to me. And it's like, you couldn't do 1/8 of the things that I do because your life is not organized in a way to allow you to do that. So it's not that you don't have time, it's that you don't know how to organize your time. That's what it is. But this is what people say. And they say this stuff to you all the time that, well, I don't have, I've been, people take advantage of it. Look, if I don't get taken advantage of again for the rest of my life, you still would never catch how many times I've been taken advantage of doing this work. You still would not catch how many times I've been disrespected doing this work. You still wouldn't come close to that. But the difference is not that you've been taken advantage of and the rest of us haven't, is what kind of foundation are we operating from? That's really the question. So it's important to answer that question to understand that creating revolution is not a transaction. It's not a transaction. It's not you hand me something and I hand you back and we never see each other again. That's a transaction. That's not what revolution is. Revolution is not becoming a Christian. And I'm not putting down Christianity. I have the utmost respect for Christianity because I understand that Christianity calls for people to become better human beings. My issue is that the majority of people in the world practicing Christianity aren't practicing it to become better human beings. They're practicing it from a place of fear, from a place of ignorance, from a place of self-righteousness. That's what we're critical of. But revolution is not like Christianity. Christianity, this is Sunday, where this program is being recorded right now. You could have been out last night, Saturday night, and raised hell, killed 10 people, wrecked all kind of mayhem and chaos on the planet. And then you could come to church today and repent and declare your love for Jesus Christ, and your sins will be forgiven, right? That's how that works. Well, revolution doesn't work like that. It's a process. You can't become a revolutionary overnight. But we also understand, as Secretary told us, that in order to have revolution, we need revolutionaries. You can't have revolution without revolutionaries. And this means that the main work is in taking this capitalist profit over people system that we have, this me first system, this ignorance is supreme system, and developing us away from that into selfless, courageous, dedicated human beings for the change that we need. And the only way that can ever happen is through a process that we have to commit ourselves to engaging in. It is not an easy process. It's not always a comfortable process, but it's a necessary process to make these things happen. And this process, it requires a focus on consistent ideological training and practice, ideas and practice, practice and ideas. As Kwame Nkrumah said, theory without practice is empty, and practice without theory is blind. Theory without practice is empty, and practice without theory is blind. You need both of them. You need theory and practice. So whenever you hear somebody saying, I don't deal with ideas, I just act, that's somebody that doesn't know what the hell they're talking about. And at the same time, you hear someone saying, well, all I want to do is study. I'm not, I just want to study about it. Then that's somebody that's not serious. Neither one of those people is really serious about making change. It's just different ends of the spectrum of the same thing. So we have to have that constant ideological training and practice. And these components, once in place, when you're engaged in a consistent political education program and practice, what these things do is they teach faith in the people. Whenever you hear people say, I don't trust people, that's somebody that doesn't have a strong revolutionary foundation. I don't care whether they tell you they're revolutionary or not. You can't say those two things in the same sentence. You can't say I'm a revolutionary and then the next sentence say I don't trust people. That's an oxymoron. Revolutionary principles and ideology teach you to understand that elitism, that saying you don't have patience in people is an elitist concept. And elitism is against the interests of the masses of people. And you cannot be a revolutionary if you're against the interests of the masses of people. So revolutionary ideology teaches patience. It teaches a clear vision that you cannot be derailed from. There are so many things that are going to try to derail you from this work. It's so easy to be derailed. There's so many people, so many things. Your revolutionary ideology is the only weapon you have to prevent that from happening. No one has been able to accomplish revolutionary consciousness without consistent ideological training, political education, and practice. No one has been able to do that no one's been able to do that just because they thought it was a good idea. You have to engage in the process of transforming yourself. in order for this to be something that maintains consistency in your life through your 30s, through your 40s, through your 50s, through your 60s, etc., and so forth. And I'll tell you, especially when you get to be the age that I am. I'll be 63 years old in a couple of months. And most of the people my age are well entrenched in this. I gotta have accomplished this or my life is a failure thing. And there's no way in hell, I'm telling you, that you're going to be able to maintain a revolutionary consciousness at my age unless you do the work. Unless you do the work. And I'll just close out by saying the picture of Kwame Ture on the screen. He said that he left the Black Panther Party because there was no commitment to centering mass political education and ideological training. And I say that because the primarily European media, but even a lot of African media, has said that Kwame left the Black Panther Party because of their alliance with white organizations. That was not the reason. And if you study the history, that was clearly not the reason. Kwame had worked with many whites in the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. And when SNCC asked the whites to leave SNCC, it wasn't because they were anti-white and didn't want to do work that whites were also engaging in. It was a strategic approach that we still need to utilize today, where white people are organizing their people in their communities, because nobody's organizing white people. That's why we have the problems we have right now. Nobody's organizing white people, and that's not our job and our responsibility. We're organizing our people. And white people come to us trying to talk to us about, well, get the hell out of my face and go organize your people. Stop them from becoming neo-Nazis. Stop them from becoming racist police. Go and get your people. That's what SNCC was saying. So that was a damn lie. He didn't leave the Panther Party for that. He left. And this comment he made about political education in the Black Panther Party, he said that to me personally. So I know that that was what he really believed. And other Black Panther Party members have said that. Assata Shakur in her book, Assata, talks about that relentlessly. Geronimo G. Jaga talks about it in his book as well, Last Man Standing. Others have echoed it. David Hilliard, This Side of Glory. They've all said it, that ideological training is critical to our ability to move forward. We thank you for joining us. We ask you to join us next week, Sunday, January 12th, 2025, 4 to 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. We're going to be talking about what would Dr. King say about today. If he were alive today, what would he be saying about what's going on in the world? So join us for that program. The upper QR code in the left-hand corner, it contains the red and white one AAPRP programs, the Forward Ever shop. You can buy clothes with conscious messages on them and support African organizations in doing that, independent African organizations. Hood Communist, Revolutionary Blog, submit articles there and support the blog and spread it, okay? And then for those of you in the Sacramento area, we want to invite you on February 1st. We have our community discussion, 2025 in a Fascist Empire. I want to invite you out to that. And there's also a conference this next Saturday, January 11th, here in Sacramento, for those of you here, an anti-fascist conference. If you want information, you can reach out to abetterworld.me, and I can give you information. I'm doing a workshop there this coming Saturday on political education and how you can implement it in your family, community, and whatever. You don't have to join the APRP. I don't want to join the APRP. We probably don't want you to join, but you still need political education. Okay, so go ahead and check all those events out. Join the All African People's Revolutionary Party. You can find out more how to do that at AAPRP-intl.org. And Burkina Books on the bottom right, the black and white QR code is a program of the All African People's Revolutionary Party in Burkina Faso. We are engaging in political education on the ground in the Sahel region. And now we got the report. We got circles getting ready to initiate in Niger and in Mali. And we need books. We need revolutionary ideological training. That's our work in the All African People's Revolutionary Party. So you should become a monthly sponsor of Burkina Books to help us spread that process on the ground in Africa. That is our work. And the Amazon workers' strike has concluded, at least for now. If it takes up again, and I hope that it does, then I will encourage people not to buy my book, but you should buy it now. A Guide for Organizing Defense Against White Supremacist, Patriarchal, and Fascist Violence. A Guide for Organizing Defense Against White Supremacist, Patriarchal, and Fascist Violence. I'll remind you, it's only $8 US. You can only get it through Amazon. Don't ask me why that is. I've explained it 25,000 times. If you missed it, go back and hear it somewhere else. But I use all the proceeds to finance the anti-fascist work that we do. We have a lot of that going on right now. So please buy the book and support. Forward ever, backwards never. Enjoy the rest of your day.